Hello and welcome to another episode of Anomalies. One way I think about the title to this program is imagine if you're going down a straight road and you see this interesting turn that you've never taken before. And so you take the turn and you find out that the turn is much more interesting and mysterious than you thought it was. So we're going to take that kind of turn today on Anomalies. I'm Dan Hall, one of your usual hosts, and with me is a very special guest, Geraldine Stith, and you're coming to us from Kentucky, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Little
Well,
state of Kentucky.
yeah. Well, thank you for doing this. The reason I was drawn to Geraldine's story is I happened to be listening to Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio. And Geraldine was a guest there, and she was talking about the Kentucky Goblins, which I kind of knew a little bit about, but I'm going to find out a lot more today when we talk with Geraldine. So thanks again for being on with us. And I would remind any of our listeners to like and subscribe to this channel. So, Geraldine, this is a story of your family, right?
Yes, yes.
Tell
Um,
us.
well, it was my dad, my grandmother, and several aunts and uncles that were there that night when this occurrence happened. So
And there were
yeah,
like 11 people, right? In
11
this
people in
line.
the house. Yes.
Keep going.
Do you want me to just tell the story
Yeah,
or
go ahead. I'll shut
okay.
up.
Okay. Um, well, of course it was Kelly, Kentucky, 1955. Back then, population was around 50 people. It was a small community, mostly farmland, farms all around. My grandmother, Miss Glennie Lankford, she had a small farm. It was like 27 acres there in Kelly. And she was a widow. So at the time, it was just my uncle Lonnie, Uncle Charlton, and Aunt Mary, and they were 12, 10, and 7 at the time.
Hmm.
And also staying with her at the house was my Uncle JC and his wife, Eileen. Also, this weekend that this occurred was O.P. Baker, who was Eileen's brother. He would come over and stay sometimes. So he was there that weekend. Well, also to round out the 11 people, my dad and his first wife, Vera, and their friends Billy Ray and June Taylor were there, and they were there because they had been stationed in Evansville, and they were so close to home that they thought, well, they would come in and you know visit, see mom, get some good home cooking. They worked with the carnival, so they were always traveling. So anyway, they were there that weekend, so that rounded out the 11 people. Well, it was a hot, dry August. They didn't have any plumbing in the house. It was a Sunday evening. My grandmother had been to church. She had gotten back, and Billy Ray decided to go out to the well to get some water. They didn't have indoor plumbing. They did have electricity, let me be clear on that, but no plumbing.
Mhm.
And so as he was out there getting his water, he heard something, looked up to where he was hearing this noise, and lo and behold, there was this oval object, silver in color, and it had all the colors of the rainbow flowing behind it. He didn't know what it was, had no clue. It scared him. He ran in the house, slammed the door behind him, and everybody stopped what they were doing and looked at him. And they're like, what's wrong with you? And he told them, he says, I just saw something out there and I don't know what it is. And he tried to explain it. And my grandmother told him, says, well, maybe it was just a shooting star. And he told her, he says, I know what those look like. It wasn't that. Well, maybe a meteor shower because they had been having meteor showers that month. And he told them, said, no, I know what those look like too. And it was neither one. And he kept on and he kept on. So my dad finally, got tired of listening to it. And he told him, he says, Billy Ray, let's go out there. You tell me again what you saw. So they walked out to the well and he pointed up to the sky, told him again. My dad tried to reason with him again, telling him maybe the star theory, the meteor shower theory. No, I know what those look like. It was none of those. And he tells him, says, "Well, Billy, there's nothing out here. Let's go back in the house. This is our last night here. Let's enjoy the evening." So they were walking back toward the house, and as they did, the old hound dog come running by them, tail tucked, ears down, scared as could be, ran under the house. My dad didn't think nothing of it. He thought, well, he just got into some trouble somewhere and he's hiding. And they keep walking toward the house, and as they are, lo and behold, from the back where the woods were, comes this little creature. He was about 3.5 tall, had a big round head. Well, this scared them. They didn't know what it was. We wouldn't know. So they go run in the house, slam the door behind them, and everybody stops and looks. "What's wrong with you two? There is something out here. I just saw it." My dad's telling everybody. And of course, their thought was, especially my grandmother, well, Billy Ray done got lucky. Lucky was my dad's nickname. Done got lucky out there to go along with this little scheme to try to scare the girls, because these were all young people in their 20s. Billy Ray's wife was like 18 or 19. So that was the thought. And they kept on. And my grandmother told us, says, "Listen, you two need to stop, because I got to get these kids in bed and you're not helping me any." Well, they kept on, and she knew it was really serious. One grabbed the rifle, and one grabbed the shotgun. One went to the front door, and one went to the back. She thought, well, something is going on here. She decides to go to the back door where Billy Ray is, and she steps out there, and he's sitting there. And she squats down beside it and asks, "Billy Ray, what did you see?" And he told her, he says, "Miss Glennie, I don't know what it was, but I hope it's something that you never have to see." So they sat there in silence. You could hear them talking in the house and carrying on, doing whatever they were doing. When lo and behold, around the corner of the house where my grandmother was sitting, there came one. She saw it. She screamed. Everybody comes running. So she must have been screaming pretty loud. And they say, "What's going on?" And she tells them, as they're helping her up, she tells them, says, there is something out here. I just saw it." So as they're standing there talking about this thing, a shot rings out in the front of the house. Well, they all go running to the front, and there's my Uncle JC. He shot one through the window. Well, Billy Ray decides to run out the front door, and as he runs out the front door, he's standing there, and there's this little stoop under above the door. And as he's standing there, this clawed hand comes down to grab his hair. My Aunt Eileen grabs him and pulls him back in the house. My dad runs out there, turns toward where the little hand came from, and there it sat. He shot it, he hit it, it rolled, floated away. Someone screamed, "There's one in the big maple tree." He turns around, sure enough, there it is, sitting on the limb in the big maple tree. He shoots it, it floats to the ground, rolls, and goes away. Well, they shoot one off the back fence. They're shooting them away from the house. They're trying to keep them away. They don't know what these things are and what are they going to do, because they're not dying. Well, everybody is hysterical. The kids are crying. The women are crying. They don't know what to do. They're trying to keep them out of the house. What do they want? And so my dad tries to get everybody settled down, and he tells them, he says, "Listen," he says, "we're going to get help. We'll go to Hopkinsville and see if we can get some help. We'll get to the police station." So they're sitting there, and everybody's trying to stay calm. And as they are, they hear one going across the tin roof. You could hear its little nails going across there, as it was doing it on purpose, I think. And so this really sends everybody to hysterics. The kids are crying again. The women are crying. What are they supposed to do? These things will not go away. My dad calms them down again and says, "Listen, we're going to get help. Just hold on." So they sit there a few more minutes, and it gets quiet again. And he says, "Let's go." So they hit the trucks, head to Hopkinsville, which is about 7 miles down the road from Kelley, looking behind them the whole way. They get to the police station. There's one little officer on duty. Of course, this is 1955. You don't have a whole platoon of them. And they're all running in there, the age from 50 to 7 years old, running in the police station in the middle of the night. Little officer's listening to him. He's trying to understand what's going on, and because they're all trying to tell him, and he says, "You're trying to tell me little men are attacking your farmhouse?" And my dad tells him, says, "You're not understanding what we're trying to tell you here. We need help." He says, "Well, listen." He says, "Hold on, I'll call the chief." So he calls Chief Russell Greenwell. And the chief tells him, says, "Listen, keep them there, try to calm them down. In the meantime, call Fort Campbell." Fort Campbell Army Base was 10 miles from Hopkinsville. Call Fort Campbell, call the radio, call the paper, call whoever you can. We're going out to Kelley. So him and his wife get there. He sees what's going on. He tells the family, "Okay, you're going to be all right. Let's go." So they head to Kelley, and you got this caravan of vehicles going out to Itsy Kelley in the middle of the night. It's pitch black, dark, because they didn't have security lights and stuff back then, not in Kelley. And so they're pulling up, and they feel it. Something doesn't feel right. It's eerie. And they get out, and the first thing, there's a car full of police officers. So they jump out, and the first thing they do is head to the back where the fence is, because they see a glowing substance on the ground. So they get up to the substance, and as they do, it vanishes. It goes away. They don't see it anymore. So anyway, they go on searching the house, under the house, everywhere they can, trying to find something. Something happened because rifle and shotgun shells were all over the outside of the house. Shotgun and rifle shells were all on the inside of the house, plus the woodwork, the screens, stuff was shot up inside the house. They were shooting at something, but they couldn't find anything. So the chief went to my grandmother and told her, says, "Miss Glennie, I am so sorry, but there's nothing here. We can't find anything. So we'll have to leave." And so everybody leaves my grandmother and the rest of them to fend for themselves the rest of the night. Of course, they're hoping nothing's going to happen. She gets the kids in bed. She finally lays down. My dad sits beside her in the rocking chair, shotgun across his lap, and they're sitting there, and she's trying to fall asleep. They're mentally and physically exhausted by this time. So she opens her eyes, and she sees one of them in the window again. And she's thinking, well, I'm just tired. So she closes her eyes, opens them a second time. Well, it's still there. The third time she opens her eyes, she screams at my dad, "They're back." So he gets up, and the battle begins again, trying to keep them away from the house. And they do this the rest of the night until the sun comes up. The sun comes up, and they disappear. The only thing they could figure is the light, the sun, the lights, from the sun. It was just too bright for them, and their little eyes couldn't handle it. That's the only thing they could figure. And that's why they left. My dad sat the family down, and he told them, he says, "Listen, no good can come of this story." He says, "I heard them last night. They were making fun of us. They were laughing at us." He says, "We're going to forget this ever happened. We're going to go on with our lives and just let it go." So the guys leave for a little bit to go do something and leave the women there with the kids. And that's when the people invasion started. Word had gotten out. It was everywhere that Kelley had got invaded by some kind of creature. So people were coming from everywhere wanting to talk to the family. They were camping out in the yard because they were wanting to see if the little things would come back again, so they'd get pictures of it and whatever and see them. People were taking souvenirs. They were walking through the yard, picking up stuff. They were walking through their house and taking souvenirs. Why?
Oh my gosh.
No clue. My grandmother was so fraught. She didn't know what to do. She told my dad, said, "They're taking everything we've got. What are we going to do?" And so my dad went and talked to one of the police officers and told him, says, "They're taking everything. I mean, people are just taking stuff." And so the police officer that was there would run the people off, but as soon as they were gone, the people would come back. And this continued. Of course, people came and did talk to the family. Bud Ledworth, who was a reporter, came and talked to the family and set them down individually in a room and asked them to describe what they seen. And of course, the infamous drawings of the little beings, of course, came out. And what were they to do? My grandmother didn't know what she was going to do because, my dad, Billy Ray, and the girls had to go back to work. They had to leave. All she was going to be left there is with the three kids and my Uncle JC and Eileen. O.P. Baker every once in a while would be there, but that's it. Could they hold them off if they were to come back? Because that was the biggest fear. Would these things come back? Because they didn't know what they were there for in the first place. If they didn't get what they wanted, would they come back to try again? So my grandmother sold the farm in 2 weeks and moved to
Whoa.
Hopkinsville to the apartment complex. And so did JC and Eileen. So somebody else bought the farm. It was actually more family that bought the farm. And that's what happened that night.
Wow. So questions come up here. Describe a little bit more about how these creatures looked and maybe why they got called goblins.
The reason they were called goblins is because my grandmother was very, very religious.
Mhm.
And she thought at first these were some kind of little beings that the devil had brought forth, because that was her thinking. Now, that you got to realize these were country people that didn't go to the movies all the time because they couldn't afford to. And so, especially my grandmother and them did not know what aliens were or space
Mhm.
beings or whatever they called them back then. And so they were called goblins at first. They were later considered to be aliens because people started coming forward later on and talking about the lights they had seen during the day that day, the lights they had seen at night, noises. And it come to find out there had been lights seen through several different counties, because you had Clarksville, Tennessee, you had Fort Campbell, Kentucky, you had Hopkinsville, Kentucky, and then you had Kelley. There were lights coming across all of those counties and hit Kelley. So whatever it was, I think people were seeing them, and somehow it landed in Kelley. Now, why Kelley? We don't know.
Who knows, huh?
Huh?
Who knows?
Well, there's theories.
Talk about those.
One of the main theories is a lot of people don't know this, but at the time, Fort Campbell had a nuclear arsenal.
Ah.
So one of the things is, did they get misdirected and landed in Kelley instead of Fort Campbell where they wanted to be? We don't know. Because
Mhm.
you got to realize when you hear a lot of these stories, they're around military bases a lot of times, or cities where there are military bases close by, or whatever. And so is this one of them. Another theory is it was the kids, because lights had been seen during the day that day. Did they see the kids out playing? And they were small, so about their size. So were they there for the kids? But my thing about that is, my mother actually lived in Kelley also. She said down in the valley with her first husband. They had 7 of these kids. So, if they were after the kids, it looks like they would have went to the house that had the most than the house that didn't. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So that's a couple of the theories that's out there. But the nuclear thing, I lean toward the most.
We've done shows. Are you familiar with Rendlesham Forest?
Oh,
And
yeah.
so that's what that's all about, allegedly, because there were nuclear weapons at both of those bases. So highly likely. How many of the creatures were there? Was
Well,
there?
Well, my dad always said there was 3 or 4. Now, if you read some of the things that's been written about it, they say 11 or 12, but he was adamant about that. He always said it was 3 or 4. It was the same 3 or 4. He said they'd shoot them, they'd come back. Shoot them, they'd come back. They weren't killing them.
Yeah. One other thing, of course, you hear all this stuff or read about this stuff on the internet, and that doesn't mean it's true. But some people, in telling this story, said that when these creatures were shot, they had kind of a metallic sound to
Mhm.
them. What about that? Is that
Yeah,
accurate or not?
it's like they said it was like hitting a tin bucket.
Really?
Oh yeah, said it would ping like a tin bucket.
Hmm.
And they were hitting them because you got to realize these were country boys. They could
Yeah,
hit.
and they were pretty
They were
close.
missing them. They were missing them, especially, you got a shotgun and a 22 rifle, 12 gauge shotgun, 20 gauge, and a 22 rifle. You ain't gonna miss.
Yeah, yeah. Hmm. Um, so the other thing I read, of course, once again, we're in the area of just supposition, was other things this could have been beside aliens.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I came across was an idea that it could possibly have been great horned owls
Oh,
that
yes.
your family saw. So what would you say to that?
Anybody in the right mind
Would
would
know.
think that, all right, you got a 12 gauge shotgun, a 20 gauge shotgun, and 22 rifle. Country boy shooting at an owl that's what, about 3 foot tall. I think they would have hit it, and you would have dead bodies everywhere, or one dead body, or whatever. So
Yeah.
no, it wasn't anything that organic that had blood running through it, or it would be
Hmm.
dead out there on the ground.
Yeah. So another thing you said that's kind of interesting is there was some kind of glowing substance on the ground. What do you think that was all about?
Well, we don't know. See, that's just it, because proper protocol was never taken with this case. It was never roped off. No samples were ever taken of anything. That's the first thing I would have done, was I got up some of that and saved it.
Hmm.
Got up some of those shotgun shells and stuff. You never know. Something could have hit, pinged it off or something, and had something on it.
Yeah.
Go up on top of that roof and see if there's anything up there. But they didn't do the proper protocol. They just wanted to get rid of it, and
Hmm.
that's it. The next morning, now there was a search grid run, and there were aircraft flying over, so they did that much, but that was it. No
And
samples or
and
anything.
you'd think that if the military was involved, which they were, that they would have been a bit more thorough with the situation.
Would think so, but I think the whole thing was just they were just wanting to get rid of it, and so they
Right.
just did what they had to do to make it look good. That's my thought. And that was it. They just
Hmm.
wanted to get rid of it. They didn't want nothing more to do with it, because you've got to realize that that's how it is. The government don't want us to know all this stuff, for one. And if they've got a chance to get rid of something, they're going to try to get rid of it, you know.
Yeah, that might be worth a little bit of a discussion. So, this UFO phenomena, which I said I used to be a MUFON field investigator, so I looked into a lot of these cases. There is a feeling that the government kind of wants to keep it on the QT. They don't want people to know that there are beings from other places, other dimensions visiting the United States. So why do you think that is, Geraldine? What's your spin on that?
Because it'd be mass hysteria. You've seen how it was during COVID. Can you imagine what it would be if they announced, yes, we are being invaded by beings from other planets? People would freak out. You would have
Hmm.
people going to the gun shops buying every artillery thing they could get, and it'd be crazy. They'd be thinking their neighbor is an alien.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be mass hysteria. The religious system would just blow up into pieces, and yeah, it'd be crazy.
In the 1960s, there was a think tank called the Brookings Institute that issued a white paper about this. And they said exactly what you just said. We can't let the public know about possible ETs because it would threaten too many parts of our society. And one of the parts was the religious
Yeah.
part, because most people don't view God, although maybe your grandmother was a little different as far as the demons. Uh, they don't view God as being an extraterrestrial, and that would be very threatening to a lot of people's
Mhm.
viewpoints.
Well, a lot of people that are really religious don't want to think there's any other thing out there, that we're it. That's
Yeah,
it. You
yeah,
know, there are no other beings, nothing out there. And that is just crazy because the universe is vast.
yeah.
You
Just
know, I don't get it.
just look up in the sky at night,
Hmm.
and you can't imagine we're the only beings out there.
Exactly.
So this has really impacted your life a lot. Tell us how this has impacted your life. You're willing to come on shows like mine and tell the story. How else has it impacted you?
Well, there's a reason for that. See, I never wanted anything to do with this. This story scared me to death because when I found out about it, I was 8 years old.
Yeah.
My parents kept this from us. We didn't know nothing about it. We found out by chance. And that's because this man and woman came one day wanting to talk to my dad about them. And when he did, I guess it was like, well, they're going to find out about it one of these days. Might as well find out about it now. So, that's when we heard the story. I was 8 years old.
Yeah.
I,
You know who the man and woman
oh,
was?
oh no,
Yeah.
they was writing a book. They were putting a book
Book.
together.
Hmm. Yeah.
And there was one of the stories they wanted in the book was my dad's. And so we got to hear the story and it scared me to death. And after that, I was like I said, 8 years old. So I can't imagine what my Aunt Mary went through at 7. But I mean, she was there and seen all the stuff. And I would go through at night and close all the doors and windows and shades and stuff because I was afraid these things were going to come back and
Hmm.
look in on us. It was scary for a kid. And so I didn't want nothing to do with this. And I didn't until what year was it? It was the 50th anniversary of the event. And Hopkinsville was putting on a big 4-day event
Hmm.
that year. And they contacted me, wanting me to be a part of it. Why? I don't know. Have no clue. But they did.
Hmm.
Wanted me to be on a panel discussion. And I'm thinking, why? And so I thought about it and I thought, okay, I'll give this a try. And so we went that weekend. It was fun. But I found out that people did not know this story.
Yeah.
They didn't know the facts. There was a lot of instances where they got my dad's name wrong. I even heard where Billy Ray got abducted, crazy stuff like that. And I thought, no, I know this story. And after that weekend, and I found out how much people loved it, I thought, I got to do something. So that's when I got everything together and wrote the first book. And
Tell us about those books and where we could get them if somebody's listening to this, want to buy the book, where they could get them.
well, you can get it on Amazon, of course, but I've got two. I wrote the first one, and it's mainly the story. Then I come up with the second one because people came forward after the first book and told me stuff that a lot of people don't know. So that book's full of that kind of thing. And you can get them on Amazon, or you can go to my Etsy shop, where if you go through my Etsy shop, I'll sign them for you.
Oh,
They're
that's a good deal.
special
So
and
go to
cheaper, I'm
Etsy.
sure. And you can go on, it's called Aliens and Goblins. It's all together
Okay.
lowercase.
And that's your website?
That's my Etsy shop.
Oh, your Etsy shop.
I
Okay.
had a website, but I just stopped the website because there's no sense in having a website these days. I mean, social media and everything, you don't really need a website. It's
Yeah.
just not worth the money. And my Etsy shop does everything for me because people can go on there and get a hold of me, talk to me. I've got all kinds of other neat things on there, and people love it.
Hmm.
And but the story itself, it's a great story, and I'm trying to keep it going. Hopkinsville, we used to have a festival in Kelly every year, but when COVID hit, it killed it. So
Yeah.
that stopped and it just ended. But Hopkinsville has decided to take it over.
Hmm.
So we're actually having a kickoff event on the 21st of this month to start next year.
Cool.
It's just a little one afternoon and night thing. It's going to be fun though. They've got big plans. And next year it's going to be at their convention center. It'll either
Mhm.
be a convention center or sportsplex. It'll be a whole lot bigger. We're going to try to get celebrities. And I mean, we're going to try to kick it off right and start getting a convention going. I think we're going to call it Goblin Con. That's what
Oh,
we're
that's
throwing.
great. I
That's what
love
we're
that.
throwing around anyway.
Goblin
But
Con.
um, I'm excited about that. I'm
Yeah.
so glad Hopkinsville is getting involved because they can do it right. It, but it's a great story. People absolutely love it. I just did a MUFON symposium in Dallas, Texas, and people, I mean, it was like crazy because people just come up to me constantly wanting to
Yeah.
talk to me about the story and everything. And it's amazing. People just love it. Just love
Yeah,
it.
I was able to go to Roswell in
Yeah.
1997 for the 50th anniversary
Oh
of
yeah.
what happened there. And what I learned about that is, first of all, Roswell is kind of controversial. We're not
Mhm.
really sure what happened there, but the town of Roswell is making a buku money
Oh
off
yeah.
of it by people were dressed up as aliens, and then
Mhm.
they had legitimate, UFO researchers there too. So a little bit for everybody. So I think that's kind of a smart move in some respect. You said one other thing I might want to ask you about. You said that you had heard other stories from people. Maybe I misunderstood this, and tell me if I did, Geraldine. You heard stories from other people who had events similar to your family's events, or had
Well, no,
strange.
no, it's not that. It's
Okay,
people have come forward and told me things from that night
okay.
that they know about or that they
Could you share
heard.
some of those? You don't have to tell us who the people were, but the
Well, I
stories might
can't
be
do
interesting.
that anyway, but
Yeah,
because most people don't want their names mentioned,
yeah.
mention their names. But oh, which one can I tell? I guess I can tell you this one. Um, there was one day, we used to live in Princeton, Kentucky, and we lived in town, and our house was sitting on a corner, so we had a street going by the side, a street going in the front of it. Well, one evening we had these people there. Actually, they were there to talk to us about this event. And we were sitting in our sunroom and we were all talking. And we noticed that there was this guy walking up and down the street. He'd go down, he'd come back, go down, come back. And this was kept on going on. He would look over toward us. And so we're just sitting there, just kind of trying to ignore him. And finally, he comes
Hmm.
up and comes to the back door where we're at in the sunroom and asks to talk to me. And well, asked if I was, the person that he thought I was. And I'm like, yeah. And he says, well, I need to talk to you. I says, okay. So we all went out on the deck and he starts telling me that his uncle was in the military. And on his deathbed, he said he had to tell somebody, so we chose him. So on his deathbed, he told him that the Kelly encounter was real, that the spacecraft had gotten from Kelly and had went about 3 miles down the road and had crashed.
Wow.
And Wright Patterson came in and
Right.
took it away.
Hmm.
And I mean, he wholeheartedly believed this. Of course, this was uncle. He was on his deathbed. He wanted to get this off his chest.
Right.
So, do you believe it? Well, yeah, you have to believe it. And what was I going to say? Gosh, my brain went. Um, and people ask me when I say this, well, do you think he was crazy? No, I don't think he was crazy. I think he was
Hmm.
a man that had something that was told to him and he needed to tell it before he died.
Right.
He wanted it to be known that it was real and that Wright Patterson came and got the little bodies. And there is a place on Wright Patterson that they will not let people go into. So, it kind of, makes credence to his tale, that, yeah, something maybe they did crash. Maybe something, maybe they did get hit enough
Yeah.
that they couldn't, you know, they were hit. They got
Mm.
shot several times, y'all. So, maybe they did crash 3 miles down. We don't know. Like I
Yeah.
said, this was farming lands, big fields and farms and forests and, could it have happened and they come in and scooped them up? Sure, it could have happened.
Hmm. And just because of what we were talking about before, that's not going to become common knowledge. The
Mm-mm.
government's not going to broadcast that kind of stuff. And evidently, there were beings that were involved in the Roswell crash that either died or were injured, and they were also taken to Wright-Patterson. So Wright-Patterson seems to be kind of a interesting dumping point for aliens who come to visit the
Alien
United States.
Central.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, Alien Central. Well,
Huh.
is there anything else you want to share with us about this event and the effect it's had on you, or the effect that what's obviously had an effect on the community if they're going to have some kind of um, a social event, a convention, alien con kind of thing. So that's obvious that the community's been impacted by that. Anything else you want to share with us about this story and how it's affected you and the community?
Well, not really. I mean, you got to think an event happened. Yeah, it happened. There's a lot of people that, like when we used to have the festival in Kelly, a lot of people that lived in Kelly now didn't like it. They did not like it at all. And I
And
think
why not?
he's
Why
glad
not?
that it's gone.
Why didn't they like it?
We never figured that out. We don't
Hmm.
know why. We don't know if they just didn't want the attention on Kelly. They didn't want the people there that were coming in for it every year. People are weird sometimes. And you got to realize we're in the Bible Belt. I mean,
Hmm.
there's two churches there in Kelly that are very prominent and they say what's what. Let me tell you right now. So I believe that was part of it too. I think the churches had something to do with it because, like I said, some religious people just don't want to believe there's anything but us.
Yeah,
And
they have a lens that they look at life through, and that's the lens.
and it's sad because, if you know your Bible, it distinctly says God created everything, the heavens and the earth, and we are made from his image. We are. What's to say he didn't create all these other beings out there before us? Then decided that he wanted to make us and put us here on earth. But there are other beings out there. And what's to say these beings are keeping us from killing ourselves? You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And I don't I just it's crazy. But yeah, I mean, as far as an effect on the family, the three small children are still alive. My Uncle Lonnie, he's 80 now. The other two, Mary, she's in her late 60s, and Charlton, he's in his 70s, and they don't talk about it. My Uncle Lonnie used to, but I think he doesn't talk about it anymore because I think he's afraid he'll forget something because you get older and you do forget things.
I
The other
know that all
two,
too well.
yeah, me too. The other two, I think they were just so frightened. They just tried to get it out of their head and let it go. Because, like I said, my Aunt Mary was 7 years old. She's a tiny
Mhm.
thing. She's a tiny little thing now. So I can't imagine being that young, that small, and seeing something that frightening that you had grown-ups blasting at all night long.
Yeah, that would be pretty traumatic for a kid.
Exactly. So, I totally get it. And it is scary, even today, if we're out at night, I look at the sky all the time
Mhm.
because, it's like, is there something out there? Is it going to come get us? And it is, it's scary. So, you know, I'm hoping that they're not here to do us harm, but we really don't know.
Yeah. So one of the things, and of course, I'm really into the UFO thing, being a former MUFON investigator and doing this podcast. A lot of people point out that if the aliens really wanted to harm us, they could have done that a long time ago. because they've got technology that we can't even hardly comprehend. I don't know,
Exactly.
maybe that's a simplistic answer, but I wouldn't think that the aliens are necessarily well, some may. I mean, it's hard to make a broad statement about that, but they could have taken us over a long time ago if that was their agenda.
I believe that too. Yeah, I do. I
Yeah.
believe.
Well, Geraldine, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, particularly all the technical things we went through to get this going. I really appreciate you taking the time
Thank you for
to,
having me. I appreciate it.
yeah, to come on the show with us. And I'll let you know when this is up on YouTube. And if you want to put it on you want to do anything with it, you're
Okay.
certainly welcome to do that. But thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. You have a
Yeah.
good
Okay, I'm going to let you go now.
one. Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.